Good morning. It's Thursday, February 19th. National Lash Day. That's nothing. That's nothing. Something about eyelashes. I don't know. That's nothing. And now, the news. There's not a lot in the news today. I asked around and everyone was like, I don't know. We don't know where Nancy Guthrie is. So instead, I'm going to spend this entire episode talking about something called the SAVE Act. Now, if you are familiar with the show, if you've been listening or watching for a while, this is about voting, so you are already braced. But if you're new to the show, you might not be aware that I have a master's in political science, and I run and founded a nonprofit called We Are Voters, which works to increase voter turnout through education. I do a lot of hee-hees and ha-has and jokes and bits, but voting is the one thing that I would genuinely consider myself to be somewhat of an expert in. Invite me to all your parties. I'm a real good time. I'll talk about voting the whole time. The SAVE Act is incredibly important. It's very, very bad, but there is still time for us to be able to fight back against it. It will, however, require you to make a phone call to your representatives. So let's talk about the SAVE Act, and hopefully by the end of this episode, you will feel like you are inspired to make that phone call. To quote Eminem, the beat, I'm going to do this a cappella. That means I don't have a script. If you're watching on YouTube, I did this motion. And if you're if you're watching this with your ears only on the podcast app, you don't know that I did a thing to say that I don't have the teleprompter button in my hands. No script for this episode, so buckle up. It might go off the rails. Just fair warning. The SAVE Act stands for Safeguard American Voter Eligibility. And on its face, that sounds like a good idea. It means that you have to prove that you're an American citizen every single time that you register to vote. Kind of makes sense if you think about it. You got to be an American citizen to be able to vote. So, in theory, why shouldn't you have to prove it? Well, I'll stop you right there and tell you that the way that voter registration works, they already check to make sure that you're an American citizen. So, mission accomplished decades ago. That's already done. No need for a SAVE Act. Check that one right off the list. What's the point? The point is to prevent people from being able to vote. Like most things the Republicans do, this is not to increase the safety of elections, but to decrease the amount of people that can easily make it to the polls. So first, let's talk about why this is completely unnecessary. Let's talk about the rate of fraud by voters. And notice that I am saying fraud by voters and not voter fraud. The Republicans are really, really good at their little PR machine. That is an undeniable fact. The rate of fraud by voters is so low that it has factually, this is a provable fact, it has factually never changed the outcome of any election. Period. Full stop. Now, I pulled the numbers I'm about to tell you from the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a right-wing think tank group. The purpose of them is to scare you about fraud by voters. That is their whole deal. That's what they want to do. So, in theory, what they should be doing is giving you the highest possible numbers. That's why I'm using their numbers. I went to them to give fraud by voters the advantage. And I would encourage you to go to the Heritage Foundation, but they are bad. But you can look these numbers up yourself. They have on their website a list that they say is like every terrible fraud by voters case since 1982. My goodness, 1982, I was but a spry 96-year-old. I wasn't even born yet. I'm basically a fetus. What's that joke? I'm also old and young. Who knows? Anyway, since 1982, they have on their website 1,620 cases of fraud by voters. 1,620 cases sounds like really, really bad. Oh my gosh, 1,620 cases? What are we going to do? This is an epidemic. It's a pandemic. It's a multidemic. I don't know. Is that something? Probably not. I don't think so. But that's what they say. is every single fraud by voters case since 1982. Okie doke. Again, I'm giving them the advantage here because I'm pulling numbers from the Heritage Foundation. That means that they are not including cases that were charged and then the judge was like, this doesn't count. It was an accident. By the way, if you go look at these cases, most of them are Republicans. But they don't want to say that. They're like, oh, they're 1,600 cases. It's really bad. Don't look who did it. But that's since 1982. That means that it includes midterm elections. For the purposes of this alone, we are only going to look at presidential elections. We're going to include all 1,620 cases on their side. But let's count the number of ballots cast only in presidential elections. Again, to give them all the help that they certainly need to make their case as strong as possible, to make it seem like fraud by voters is as big scary as possible. There were 11 presidential elections between 1982 and now. The total votes cast in those 11 presidential elections is 1,323,871,420 nice 420. I got distracted by that. 420. So 1,323,871,420. If you take that number and put those 1,620 fraud by voter cases in it, do you know what the percentage of fraud by voter cases you have? It is 0.000012%. That's 5 zeros before the 1. That 5 zeros before the 1. That's so tiny. It's so embarrassing for them. Let's help them out a little bit. Let's make the rate of fraud by voter cases, let's expand it by 10,000. And we're going to cut the number of ballots cast in half. And remember, we're already giving them an incredible advantage already. Because in this example, that's 1,620 cases. That's all the cases of fraud by voters from 1982 to 2025, but we are only counting the ballots cast in presidential elections, but we're still going to cut that in half, so we are giving them an incredible advantage already. We're going to give them another one, and we're going to expand the number of fraud by voters by 10,000. So now we're talking about 16,200,000 cases of fraud by voters. And total votes cast, 661,935,710. That's a crazy advantage. Crazy advantage. And still, even with that advantage, what is the rate of fraud by voters? 0.0024. I have expanded the rate of fraud by voters by 10,000 and cut the amount of ballots in half. They already have an incredible advantage, and I still cut that incredible advantage in half, and they still can't get. There's still 2 zeros before you get to a percentage. By the way, if we were to add in the number of midterm ballots, do you know what that number is? Now we're talking about 2,189,518,776 ballots cast. That's total, including midterms and presidential elections. All that, this is such a silly number. That is the total ballots cast between 1982 and 2025. And still, just 1,620 little fraud by voter cases. Some of them were tossed out eventually. That percentage, 0.000007. That's 6 zeros and then a 7. It's the same rate as saying, like, how many times has Mandy Moore not been good at singing or acting? 0. It's the same rate of times that I have been on a hike and not immediately been out of breath. 0. Why were those the examples? No script. Just things that are running through my head at all times. Again, invite me to all your parties. I am a time. You'll have certainly a memory. Stupid. Then I was like, hey, Kim, find more cases. Maybe this is outdated. It's not, but maybe it is. So I looked up more cases on congress.gov. As you know, Trump's just like, my fingers are normal size, both too small and too big. I don't know how that works. Having people go to the internet.com and just inventing facts. So if you go to congress.gov, they also have a list of fraud by voters. 1,176 proven cases of fraud by voters. That's less. Fraud by voters has never, not once, changed the outcome of any election. Voter fraud is what the Republicans are doing, led by Trump, to cheat you out of being able to cast your ballot and make your voice heard. One of the things that they are trying to make it seem like is a no-brainer. Why on earth would this not be something that you should be able to have to do in every single election is show a voter ID. You have to show a voter ID when you get alcohol. You have to show a voter ID when you get on a plane. This is what Susan Collins, who became the 50th vote in the Senate for the SAVE Act, this is what she said. This is her rationale. By the way, Susan Collins is in the middle of a very close re-election campaign. She's so worried about everything. It must be so hard, probably not, to be Susan Collins. She perpetually has a tum-tum ache. She's in the middle of a really hard re-election campaign. That's the only reason why she's voting for this. But that was her rationale. You gotta be able to show an ID when you get on a plane and buy alcohol. Hey, Suze, those are not constitutional rights. It's not your constitutional right to get onto an airplane. It's not your constitutional right to be able to buy alcohol. It is your constitutional right to be able to cast a ballot for free. It costs money to get an ID. That's called a poll tax. So forcing someone to show an ID is a violation of the Constitution because it costs money to get an ID. It is also unnecessary. Again, see I just did the whole math thing, and it was really hard for me because I had to remember a whole lot of numbers. Let's talk about voter IDs. Why is this such a big deal? Okay, just have a voter ID then. Nope. Trick question. Bad. So let's talk about Greg Abbott, my least favorite topic. By that I mean, that dude sucks. Prior to becoming the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott was the attorney general, and he wanted to make voter IDs a thing. And the Supreme Court kept telling him, no, because they knew that it would be a problem for people to be able to show a voter ID. It makes things very difficult. And I'm going to come back to why that is in a second. But every single time that he was like, pretty please, can I do voter disenfranchisement and make them show voter IDs? They said no. He was turned away at every single turn. Then 2013 rolls around and we have a case called Shelby v. Holder. This is how we know that Chief Justice Roberts is a bad, because he was the deciding vote in Shelby v. Holder. Shelby v. Holder was the first crack in the Voting Rights Act. So previously, states and a few counties that had disenfranchised voters, if they wanted to now make any changes to their voting laws, instead of just making them within their state or county, they had to be able to argue federally, on a federal level, why they should be able to make that change. This was to protect voters. So basically, not to get into the weeds of Shelby v. Holder, but the case was about Section 5, which was whether or not these states needed to get pre-clearance from the federal courts to be able to change their own voting rights. But the Supreme Court did not rule on Section 5. Instead, they ruled on Section 4B, which was the math section of it. Taking away that pre-clearance section of it, to quote Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that's how she got her notorious RBG nickname, by the way, is because of her dissent in this case, in Shelby v. Holder, because she famously said that taking away pre-clearance is like getting rid of your umbrella when it's already raining because you're not getting wet. That's not the exact quote, but that's basically what she said. Because it fractured. It was the first fracture in the Voting Rights Act. And it allowed Texas and other states to suddenly be able to do whatever they wanted to voters because they did not need to get a federal approval. So then Greg Abbott, within hours of that ruling, put into place a voter ID law into Texas because he knew that it would disenfranchise voters, because he had tried over and over and over again to get it passed, and the Supreme Court had told him no, because it disenfranchised voters. But as soon as he didn't need to get a federal ruling on it, he did it. I think, personally, it's very silly that I have a master's in political science. I work in television. What are we doing here, guys? But it is a science. It is a social science. And these things are provable facts. It is a provable fact that voter ID laws, voter IDs, make it harder for people to go out and be able to cast a ballot. They do not safeguard elections. If they did, I would be all for it. It is important that elections are safe, that they are free and fair, which is why the SAVE Act is bad. And I want to come back to something else. It's a three-pronged anger that I have here. I should have written a script. I apologize, Mom. It's a three-pronged anger that I have here, which is one, fraud by voters is something that has never once, not ever, ever affected the outcome of any election. Two, voter IDs do not do anything except for disenfranchise voters. North Dakota, by the way, doesn't even have voter registration. So you can run your mouth all you want about like, oh, we got to make sure that it's as safe as possible. Meanwhile, North Dakota's out here being like, oh, you from the Piggly Wiggly, get on in here, Fred. Cast that ballot, baby. States decide how their elections work. That's why we have North Dakota out here being like, Johnny Joe, Johnny Joe, I just saw you at church. You didn't cast your ballot yet. Go do it right now. And we have states like Michigan, where Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson has done incredible things to safeguard democracy in the state. You can go and look at the numbers and see that voter turnout has increased since she became Secretary of State because she has done incredible things in that state. Here in California, and I realize that I am incredibly biased, and guess what? I don't care because it still remains a fact that Lorena Gonzalez made California democracy better with the work that she did by making sure that it was, you don't need a stamp to be able to return your ballot here. We are a vote-by-mail state, largely because of her. Democracy is better in California. We are stronger in California because of the work that Lorena did. Fact. Provable fact. The third prong of anger is the fact that on January 6th, 2020, that buffoon, that dude has so much money and he can't even put on a suit that fits him correctly. I don't know why that is the thing, but it's like your ties are too long. It doesn't fit you around your wrists. He lost that election in 2020. And then he called around and he asked people in various states to cheat. That is what he did because he lost that election. And then when nobody would just let him find the votes that he needed, when fake electors would not pretend like he had the electors needed to overturn the states that he would need to win the election, he sent a mob to the Capitol, and he incited, at his direction, an insurrection on January 6th. He led a mob there. The only way that you can take back this country is with strength. We're going to march down. I'm going with you. He knew the danger. He pointed them at the Capitol and let them go. That was him. He is an insurrectionist. On January 6th, a Confederate flag ran through our Capitol building for the first time. That is something that did not happen during the Civil War. And then the first thing that he did when he became the president again, because we are a deeply broken country and we elected him again, is he let every single one of those insurrectionists go. Because he himself is an insurrectionist. And the idea that this insurrectionist would now be able to change our voting laws to disenfranchise voters further unless they agree with him, I am furious, and it should infuriate you also, the idea that an insurrectionist now wants to disenfranchise voters. He is a small, petty, angry man who is deeply, deeply broken, and this party is pathetic because they continue to just say yes to him at every single turn. If Trump being in the Epstein files for the most heinous of crimes is not a reason enough to stand up to him, can they please at least do it for the fact that he wants to disenfranchise millions of voters? Please? By the way, there are a million reasons that someone is not going to have proof of citizenship. Congratulations to you if your proof of citizenship, if your birth certificate and social security card are 2 feet away from you at all times. That's great. That's a privilege. I don't know where my social security card is. I'm not kidding. If you know where mine is, do you mind telling me? Because I don't think I know where mine is. That's not a joke, actually. That means that you've never lost your house in a fire. That means you've never lost your house in a flood or a tornado. There are a lot of reasons that someone might not have easy access to this paperwork. Or perhaps you got married. Fellas, you try to make things more difficult for me to get voting? If you are married and your birth certificate does not match your driver's license, ladies, I wonder if that's a coincidence that it's gonna mean that you probably can't vote. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that women lean 12 points more Democratic than they do Republican. I'm sure that's just a wild coincidence. By the way, I left out a ton of studies and some Supreme Court cases and state cases where it has proven that voter ID laws disenfranchise voters. They have never once helped anything. Multiple states are vote by mail states. That means that the majority of votes cast are through the mail. They still don't have fraud. I mean, they have some fraud. Everything has some fraud. But it's negligible and it has never once changed the outcome of any election. Look, let's call it what it is. This episode should have had a script. It's absolutely a mess. But what I hope that you can take away from it is the incredible importance of the fact that the SAVE Act is the biggest threat to democracy right now. It is a threat to you. It is a threat to your voice. The right to vote was not just something that, happened one day. We just woke up and we were like, everybody gets the right to vote. Dope. When America first became America, only 6% of the people that were here were able to cast a ballot. It means that since then, every single group of people, every class of people, every race has had to fight to be able to cast a ballot. The story that America tells itself about us is we're some beautiful democracy and everybody has access to it. That democracy was fought for. People died for it. When we go into that ballot booth, it is on the shoulders of every single person that fought for our right to be there. It is a right that we have. It is a constitutional right that we have. And also, it is an incredible privilege to be able to go in there and cast a ballot, to be able to legally overthrow the government every 2 years, every 4 years. It's a constitutional right that we have. It's an incredible privilege that we bear. And people fought and died for that right. And it sucks that we have to continue to fight for it. But we owe those who came before us to continue to fight. And we owe those who will come after us to continue to fight as well. The thing that I keep saying over and over and over again is that America's best days are not behind us. They cannot be. Because those best days were not everybody's best days, and those are not the best days for America. And so our best days must be ahead of us. But those days are going to require us working hard for them, fighting hard for them. The democracy that we have, it's like holding on by the skin of its teeth, but I swear to God, it is still there. We still have a democracy. We still have a democracy. The midterms are coming. A lot of people are like, oh, there's not going to be elections this year. There are going to be elections. The way that we know that there are going to be elections is because they don't want you to vote. They have the SAVE Act because they don't want you to vote. So I lied. I'm realizing now, I should have had a script. I'm so sorry. I'm realizing now I lied at the beginning of this episode. You have multiple jobs. Nah, sorry. Turns out it's really hard to fight for democracy. You have multiple jobs. One, you gotta call your representative. Call them and tell them that the SAVE Act is bad. Your other job is going to be to register to vote. Double check your registration. You need to be double checking your registration ahead of every single election. You don't want to be surprised when you go to cast your ballot. You can do that through my nonprofit. Do it anywhere. You can do it at my nonprofit, wearevoters.org. You can do it right there, upper right-hand corner. That's easy. The other thing is to get involved in an election. Get involved in a local race in your city, in your town. Get involved in a race anywhere. One that I would recommend, and again, I'm biased and I don't care, I'll call it out right now, is Jocelyn Benson in Michigan, because she has been an advocate for democracy at every single turn. She was an incredible Secretary of State. Michigan is one of the most important elections happening right now in the country. She's running for governor, and she will safeguard democracy there as well. So start getting involved in elections, because those elections really need you. Whether you live in that state or not, there is work that can be done. Time, money, or influence. Everybody has something. If you don't have time to volunteer, by the way, you can volunteer, you can knock doors if you're local, you can make phone calls, you can send texts, there's a ton of ways you can volunteer even if you're not local. But if you don't have time to volunteer, you can perhaps donate money to a campaign. That's very helpful at any amount. If you don't have time or money, that is okay. You have influence in some way. Maybe it's going to 5 people and getting them to register to vote. That's okay. That's 5 people that weren't registered or double checking their registration. That's huge. Time, money, or influence. Everybody has something. And that's it. That's the ramble. No, I can't stress this enough. I should have had a script. I'll do it tomorrow. The number to Congress will be in show notes. Please call. Tell them. Tell them I sent you. Don't tell them I sent you. Please call and tell them that the SAVE Act is bad, that you don't like it. It's a no thank you bite. You like your democracy like you like your coffee. Don't do any of that. Just tell them that the SAVE Act is bad and that I'll have a script tomorrow. Tell them you don't. And because of that, hey, that's it. That's the news. I'm proud of you.